Hello and welcome to Cupcake Addiction's Christmas tree pinata tutorial, where I'll be showing you how to make this awesome Christmas tree pinata, perfect because you can make it up to a week in advance so you don't have any extra work to do on Christmas Day. Tools and equipment that we will be using today. I'm using an iced cake board. So this is just a regular cake board and I've iced it. I've got a tutorial which shows you how to ice a cake board, and that's a little bit optional. I like to put mine on a cake board if I'm going to give it away or take it somewhere for lunch, but you can of course just use a plate or anything you like. I'm using a sharp knife, 3 spoons, 2 Ziploc bags, a pair of scissors, a little bit of green fondant, either fondant or modelling chocolate will do. I've got a giant cupcake case. So this is a giant silicone cupcake case and it must be silicone. You can't do this with the metal cupcake cases. 2 spatulas, some melted dark chocolate, some melted green candy melts. I've also got some melted yellow chocolate or yellow candy melts. A little bit of candy for decorating, so regular M&Ms and miniature M&Ms, both in the same bowl there. I've got a pre-prepared little fondant bow. This is just an optional extra if you decide you want to go ahead and make those presents, and I'll be showing you how to make those in this tutorial. A pre-prepared chocolate star, which I'll also be showing you how to make in this tutorial. For candy to go inside my pinata, I'm using some candy canes, very Christmassy, and I just picked some of my favourite candies that I think are going to give a really nice spill effect. I've also got 3 little pieces of wax paper or greaseproof paper, just a shallow tray or bowl, and my star template, which I will link to in the description box below. So let's get started. Now, the first thing that we want to do is you want to start preparing the actual base of your pinata, because this needs to go into the fridge and have a little bit of time to dry. So the bottom half's going to be dark chocolate and the top half's going to be those melted green candy melts. So this is where my spatulas come in. You just want to pour in that dark chocolate, and not all of it, about half to 2/3. And you can either tip it, it depends on how fluid your chocolate is. So you can either tip it like this so that you're sort of tipping it up the sides of your giant cupcake case, or if you find your chocolate's a little bit thicker, you can just use your spatula and sort of just scoop it up the sides. With this one too, 2 thin coats is better than 1 thick coat. So once you're happy you've got a relatively nice coating, just scoop a bit of it up and just give yourself a bit more around those top edges, because you want a really nice thick top to be able to join the two together. We'll repeat that process with the green candy melts. Perfect. Those 2 are going to go off into the fridge for about 5 or 10 minutes until they're completely set. Alright, so while those 2 are in the fridge setting, I'm going to show you how to make the little star that's going to go on top of your Christmas tree. And I like mine to be a little bit oversized, the star, because I really want it to be nice and big. So I've got a printable template, which as I said I'll link to in the description box below. But for this you're going to need the template, your little piece of wax paper and your flat tray. You'll also need your Ziploc bag, a spoon and those yellow candy melts or yellow melted chocolate. Scoop some of those yellow candy melts into our Ziploc bag, pushing it all the way to the corner before we seal it up and making sure we let any air out of the bag. Then you want to cut quite a reasonable sized tip off your Ziploc bag. If you cut it too fine, it's just going to take you longer to do this. So you can see there, quite a thick strip is coming out. So just holding your wax paper, or you can sticky tape it down, you just want to trace around the outside edges of your star, and then you want to fill your star in. Just be careful not to get too much of that yellow chocolate into the corners, because we're going to tap this down and you really want your corners to stay nice and defined. So just sort of press it into the corners, but then kind of use the tip of the bag just to drag it out again so that it's not too thick in the corners. Alright, so once your little star's looking something like this, you can pop it into the plate, just that little piece of wax paper, or onto your tray, oven tray, whatever it is that you're using, and you want to give it a couple of good hard taps on the bench. And what that does is it actually just smooths out the top of it so that you don't have any bumpy ridges. And then if you need to, you can just go around and just smooth off any edges that might have come out of shape a little bit. Beautiful. That one's going to go off into the fridge until it's completely set. All right, now while our star is setting and our base is setting, we can prepare a couple of these presents. They're a bit optional, but whenever I make something like this, I do like to use a cake board or something like that to really, I guess, extend the size of my giant pinata. So I'm just going to take that fondant or that modelling chocolate, and you can also use square candies like caramels or licorice all sorts for this if you don't want to use fondant. But I'm just rolling it into a ball, and then I'm just going to sort of squish it out so that it's a bit of an oval, I guess, and use the sharp knife just to cut it into a square. All different shapes and sizes is great for these. Perfect. So something about that size for our present. I'm just going to use my fingers just to neaten off the edges. I've also got this little pre-made bow. Now I've got a whole tutorial on my channel, My Cupcake Addiction, which shows you how to make these little bows, which I'll link to in the description box below. I kind of think the presents look okay without them, but if you want to go that extra mile and have the little bow on top, they do kind of make them just a little bit cuter. All right, now for the little ribbons on our present box, I'm just wiping the tip of that Ziploc bag off. It is quite a nice thick tip. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to use a piece of wax paper so we don't make too much of a mess. And we're going to use this to make our ribbons. So to make our ribbons, I'm just going to come across, up the side, straight over the top, and on the other side. So you'll see I start a little bit before my present and I finish a little bit after. That's just so that I've got a bit more control, and my wobbly bits are normally at the starts and the ends. Beautiful. It also saves you having another colour of fondant. All right, now straight away you want to pick that up, and we're just going to tuck under any of those little bits of melted chocolate so that it's really nice and neat. So just tucking under the present there. Stick it on a fresh sheet, so your other sheet of wax paper. And if you want a bow, on goes the bow. Really cute and really simple little present. So it's only been about 5 or 6 minutes and both of my first coats are nice and firm. We're just going to do exactly the same thing again and just apply the rest of that melted dark chocolate to the bottom and the rest of the green candy melt to the top in a second coat, spatulaing it up the sides and making sure to give our edges a nice coat. If you're using candy melts, you'll have no problems with them setting. They do set really hard. If you're using chocolate, however, you want to make sure that you're using a compound chocolate. So I use actual proper baking chocolate or chocolate that's designed for melting and baking. If you were to use, say, a block chocolate or a really high quality couverture chocolate, it actually requires tempering so that it will set nice and firm. Otherwise, it will always stay a little bit soft. So just bear in mind what sort of chocolate you choose when you're picking your chocolate for this piñata. Back into the fridge until they're completely set. Coming back from the fridge now, all of our little pieces are dry. So our start, once that's dry, should just come off that baking paper really, really nice and easily. And your 2 pieces of your Christmas tree. So when you take these out, what you want to do is you want to sort of roll that silicone down around the outside edges, and you'll actually hear it kind of peeling away from the chocolate. Try to touch the outside edges of the chocolate as little as you possibly can because it will get fingerprints. So you'll see there I haven't touched the outside of the chocolate at all, just the case. And then I'm putting my hands on the inside and out comes our top section. Before you take the top section out, you can see any of these little sort of raggedy edges. You can just go around and just sort of break these off. Otherwise, you can use your sharp knife and just sort of just come around the edges really quite gently because you don't want to take any chunks off there, but you do want to neaten it up a little bit. Beautiful. Don't worry too much about the littler sort of sections or the littler details, just the bigger chunky ones that are more noticeable. Lovely. Now do the green first so that you don't get little pieces of the brown from your base on your green top. Once again, just rolling down the sides and pulling free our base and just snapping any sort of larger overhanging edges. Perfect. Now here you want to clean your workstation down so that you've gotten rid of all of those little pieces of chocolate before we put this piñata together. All right, so this is where I like to attach mine to my cake board. So if you are going to use a cake board, make sure that you always know where the back of your cake board is, and mine is usually where I've joined my ribbon. And then you just want to take just a little bit of your green or your yellow, it doesn't really matter, just a little dollop, and this is just going to glue the base down to the board. Stick it down, and you've got a couple of seconds here just to check that it's nice and central, where it will still slide around a little bit before that chocolate or that candy melt starts to set. Lovely. Now, you want to take some of your green candy melt, or you can use dark chocolate, just depending on what you've got more of left over. Scoop it into a Ziploc bag, let all of the air out and seal it up. Everything's starting to take shape. Now, you want to fill your little piñata with candy, but don't be tempted just to dump all of the candy in there. You want to kind of take it in little handfuls and just position it in, because if you dump it all in, you're going to put too much pressure on not ideal sections of the case. You want to sort of allow that pressure to go in relatively evenly. Now I'm just going to add here just a couple of handfuls of M&Ms, and I'm doing this because the other chocolates that I've put in are quite large, and I really want to get a nice spill effect when we do break into this piñata. Those M&Ms are just going to be a smaller candy that helps us achieve that. Perfect. Now from here you want to make sure that you don't have any of those wrappers touching the actual lip, and no candy on the board. And then we're going to take this candy melt, snipping off quite a generous corner here. We're going to pipe a nice big thick amount of candy melt all around the outside here, and then very quickly put on the top of our Christmas tree. Do just be careful that none of that candy melt drips over the side onto your cake board. If it does, get it off straight away because it's less likely to stain if you can get it off as quickly as you can. All right, now working quite quickly here, take your top of your Christmas tree, make sure that you've got your best side facing forward and position it down onto that candy melt seal, and then run your finger all the way around the edge just to neaten it up. And getting down at eye level with your cake, come around, just make sure that your candy melt hasn't sort of come down around the outside edges of your dark Christmas tree base. All right, so it's time to start adding our details. So using the remainder of your green candy melt, we're going to just start adding on just some little, I guess they're lights or little baubles. So just place down a little tiny dollop of green candy melt and affix your M&Ms. Large ones, small ones, however many you like in whatever colour scheme you like. You might like just to do red, green and white here, or you might like to, like me, add a bit more colour and make them all nice and bright. Something to think about here, make sure all of the M's from your M&Ms are actually facing inwards to the cake, not outwards so that your guests are going to see them. All right, so once I've added all of my larger M&Ms, I like to go around and just add in some of my little mini M&Ms. Gives you a little bit more of a variety of sizes. You could also add in peanut M&Ms here or almond or whatever candy you like. You might also find that your candy melt starts to harden a little bit by now, so you might just need to take it out of that Ziploc bag, put it in the microwave again just for 30 seconds or so just to remelt it, and then put it into a fresh Ziploc bag so that you can keep going. Now finally we're going to add on our star and also the presents. So you've got your candy melts and you've got your star. With the candy melts, you do want to put quite a generous amount of these, and you are going to have to support that star. So a nice little blob on the top there of that candy melt, and down goes the star, sitting right into it, and then just support it with your fingers. If you want to here, you can just go and smooth it down around the front edges. Beautiful. And then our finishing touches, of course, will be our presents. So however many presents you want to put on, if you want to put them at all, you can either just rest them on the board, or depending on whether or not you're going to be traveling this or actually moving it around, you can just pop a little bit of candy melt on the back and on the bottom and stick it down. I kind of like to stack the presents in different colours, sort of looking like they're piling up around the bottom of the Christmas tree. A couple on one side and a couple on the other side. So once my presents are all on, I'm just going to take one final look. Now that I've put that star on, you'll notice I left a bit of a gap around the top. I just want to put just 2 or 3 more little tiny mini M&Ms just around that top section. Beautiful. So there you've got your finished Christmas tree piñata. I hope you guys have enjoyed this tutorial. Yet another great idea for your silicone giant cupcake mold. I hope that this is an idea that you will share with your family either this Christmas or next. And as always, thanks very much for tuning in to My Cupcake Addiction. Like Christmas, and today I'm going to be showing you guys how to make my take on a Christmas gingerbread house. Only we're not making any gingerbread, we're actually not baking anything at all, and I'm going to show you how to put this really nice, sweet, warm glow inside so it actually looks like someone's home. I'm teaming up today with Tammy over at YoYoMax12. She's one of my all-time favourite YouTubers, and she has a fabulous assortment of Christmas recipes and ideas for you guys. I'm going to link to her Christmas playlist in the description box below, and also to her channel. If you love my channel, you're definitely going to love hers, so make sure you go and check out YoYoMax12. Let's get started on our beautiful little non-gingerbread houses. For the base of your candy houses, you're going to need a family-sized Kit Kat block, and I've also got 5 cookies and cream Kit Kat bars. For the walls, I'm using Hershey's chocolate. I chose Hershey's because it's got a great brick effect, and it's a nice thin chocolate, so it's not too hard to crack into, but you can use any brand you like. I've melted some milk chocolate, and I've also got a set of sprinkles. I believe these are a Wilton set. They consist of some hollies, some little gingerbread men, and some snowflakes and Christmas trees. I'm using 2 cookie cutters today. I've got a small square and a small round, and I've also got a knife, a pair of scissors, and a Ziploc bag. I'm using candy canes, and I've also got a couple of small Christmas candies, and you're also going to need a sharp knife and some boiling hot water. For the flickering light effect, I've got a set of 2 LED flickering candles. These were $2 for 2. If you can't find them near you, take a look on eBay. For your walls, you're going to need 4 Hershey's blocks. You need 2 of those completely intact, so no cracks or breaks. For the other 2, these ones both broke. That doesn't matter because you only need 3 rows here. Dip your cookie cutter into that boiling water, and you might need to let it sit in there for a little while to heat up. And then I'm just resting it with the slightest amount of pressure on the chocolate. I'm not pushing and I'm not cutting the chocolate. I'm really just letting the heat from the water melt a circle into the chocolate. Now use your sharp knife just to cut away the very, very corners of the circle to make a little door shape. And you don't need to heat your knife up for this, just cut straight across. So you should be cutting from the join of the first row down all the way up to the center of the middle row of your chocolate. So you've kind of got 2 little cathedral shapes, one with a door and one without. These thin blocks are really easy to cut, but make sure that your chocolate's at room temperature, because if it's too cold, it's going to be brittle and it's going to crack. If you're in Australia and you don't have access to Hershey's, Lint's a great alternative. Now you want to rest your little square into your boiling water and you want to heat that up just like we did for the circle. I'm going to cut a point in my Hershey's block, 1 row in, but it's kind of got the line that divides the row right in the center of our little piece of chocolate. Take your knife now and simply cut along that little join and voila, you've got yourself 2 little window shutters. How easy is that? Pour some of your melted milk chocolate into your Ziploc bag, and you can use dark or white here. Just go with the same color of the blocks of chocolate that you're using. And then you want to take your Kit Kat block. These are fantastic because the lines kind of act like measurements. Now taking the back wall, so the one that doesn't have the door, dip it in that melted milk chocolate. And this is the best part of this house. Those lines between the Kit Kat actually hold our little end pieces up, so you don't have to do that like weird balancing act that you often have to do with gingerbread houses while you wait for them to set. Run a good thick line of chocolate all the way from that back wall to the second row of Kit Kat on both sides, and you'll also need a bit of chocolate up either side of that back section as well so that you've got something to stick onto, and then place both of your little side balls in place. Now you want to work relatively quickly here. You shouldn't need to do much to support them, but you want to dip your front section in that chocolate and get it in place because you might just need to adjust those walls out a little bit like you can see here before that chocolate sets so that you've got that perfect fit. Pop them all into place. You should have chocolate lining every surface that's touching, and that's not going to take very long at all to set. Using a Ziploc bag, you just want to place a little line of chocolate on either side of each of your windows, and we can apply our little chocolate window shutters. And this cake is only Christmassy because of the type of decorations we're going to put on it. This would make a perfect Hansel and Gretel style house. If you were having like a fairy tale party or a hoodwinked party, you can decorate it up for so many different occasions. And because it's chocolate, it doesn't necessarily have to be Christmassy. But we want ours today to be Christmassy. So you want to take your candy cane and just snap off the straight edge. So you've got like a little rounded arch, and then a bit of melted milk chocolate on the back, and use that arch just to stick over the door. It doesn't matter if it's not the exact same size, you're going to get the general idea. Take 2 of the long straight bits of candy cane now and just measure them up against the side of the house so they're the same height as those side walls. Break them to size and then use a bit of that melted milk chocolate to glue them on, kind of like little columns or little pillars on either side of the door. I also decided, because I had a bunch of offcuts, to put some little details, little candy cane shelves or window boxes underneath my windows, and I put another length of candy cane on the back. These houses really come to life the more detail you put on them, so make sure that you're not too shy with the amount of different candies and the amount of colour that you want to add to this house. Now I use the cookies and cream Kit Kat bars because they've got milk chocolate on the back which blends in with the house, and the top kind of looks like freshly fallen snow. So that I didn't have too much overhang, I cut about a centimetre and a half off the end of each of my little bars of Kit Kat. And one of those Kit Kat bars you want to cut in half so you've got it in 2 lots of 2 fingers. Take your Ziploc bag now and you want to run a nice amount of chocolate up the sides of your front section and then just far enough across the side wall to enable 2 fingers of Kit Kat to stick. Do it on both sides and then attach both of your Kit Kats at the same time so they can kind of support each other in that middle section. You shouldn't need to support them too long here, but just let that chocolate get a little bit tacky. I added 2 of my little offcuts just to either side of that front door on the Kit Kat block, kind of just like a bit of extra detail, and I used a tiny amount of milk chocolate just to position 3 of those little Wilton tree sprinkles in place. I added some holly and berries just above the front door, just using that melted chocolate to stick them on. And I also added some holly leaves just above those columns. And then I decided to put 4 little gingerbread sentries right outside the front door. Now, you want to activate your little LED flickering candle, and these are designed for restaurant use, so they last hours, but I do recommend putting these in just before you want to serve, maybe within a few hours of serving, because then you'll get a few more hours of light. And you need to do this before you've added in your final sections of roof. So I recommend you can make the rest of this house in advance and just leave those Kit Kats and everything covered in a bit of plastic wrap until you're ready to put those candles in and get going. You're going to attach the rest of those Kit Kats just by running a nice thick line of chocolate up the side of the Kit Kat and along the top of that side wall, just like we did with the start. And you should have 2 full 4-fingered Kit Kats and 1 2-fingered Kit Kat on either side. Once they're all joined up nicely in the middle, you need to run a nice thick line of that melted milk chocolate across the top of the roof line, or the center of the roof line. And then I just filled it with some more of those holly leaves and some more of those little red berries, just to give it kind of like an ivy leaf effect, or a bit more greenery and a bit more detail. So there's your gorgeous little welcoming, warm looking non-gingerbread house. You haven't had to turn on an oven, you haven't had to bake anything, and let's face it, everyone loves a bit of chocolate. On the back there, I added a little bit more holly on either side of that candy cane, 1 of those round candies, and another 4 or 5 gingerbread men. So I know how some of you guys feel about coconut. This is purely optional, but I just added a lovely little sprinkle of freshly fallen coconut snow all around the outside and slightly along the roof line of my little candy house. Now, looking at this completed little house, even if I knew there was a witch inside that was planning on boiling me up and eating me, I'm pretty confident I'd still go in. I know exactly how Hansel and Gretel came unstuck. I hope you guys have enjoyed this cool no-bake Christmas idea. Make sure you check out Yo-Yo Max for lots more in the way of Christmas stuff, and I'm also going to link to my Christmas playlist down below. Have a fantastic, sweet, Merry Christmas, and as always, thanks very much for watching.